I'm 32 years old, and a few months ago, I invited my sister, Emily, 26, to move in with my husband and me after she hit rock bottom. She had just lost her job when the company she worked for shut down. And right after, she was struck with a severe case of West Nile virus. After talking it over with our parents, who live out of state, I decided it was the right thing to do, to let her stay with us temporarily while she recovered. I wanted to help her get back on her feet and save some money since it was clear she wouldn't be working for a while. I felt like I was being a good sister, offering her a safe place when she had nowhere else to turn. But how did she repay me? By sleeping with my husband. A few days ago, Emily asked us to sit down for a serious conversation. I figured it was to discuss her recovery and possibly moving out, but instead, she dropped a bombshell. She and my husband had been having an affair for weeks, and to top it all off, she was pregnant with his child. I stared at my husband in shock, and I could tell from his face that he was just as blindsided as I was. Emily went on to say she was sorry for the shock, but that what was done, and she couldn't change the past. Then she did the unthinkable. She told me that I needed to leave because she felt uncomfortable being around me in her current condition. She was carrying my husband's child, after all, and apparently, that entitled her to a new life. I was livid, but I kept my cool. I told her calmly that I wasn't going anywhere because this was my house, not hers. If anyone was leaving, it was her, and she could take my cheating husband with her. Let them start their new happy family wherever they pleased. But I was filing for divorce and didn't want anything to do with either of them. Emily seemed to think I was just angry and joking. But then my husband stepped in and confirmed I wasn't playing around. He told her that, unlike her, he didn't own a thing. He had no assets to take with him, which, apparently, was news to Emily. He had deceived her about everything. For some context, my husband and I had been together for 8 years, married for the last 5. A few months after we tied the knot, I took a big risk and started my own business. Thankfully, it paid off, and we made the decision that he could stay home and pursue his dream of writing full-time, a hobby he'd always loved. For years, he's been focused on writing his great novel and taking care of the housework. Since we don't have kids, there wasn't much to do around the house, and everything we own was mine. I had bought it all, and we both agreed it made sense for me to own everything. I'm sure he regrets that now. When my husband admitted to Emily that he didn't actually own anything and had been lying, she lost it. She started yelling at him, calling him a fraud and a liar, claiming she had been tricked. It was hard to ignore, but I didn't care about their drama at that point. I just wanted them out of my house. I had to step in and tell them to stop yelling. I needed them gone immediately. I wasn't going to let them take their time packing. I wanted them out of my life, out of my sight. To his credit, my husband knew he couldn't talk his way out of this one. He understood how much I value my dignity and self-respect, and he knew I'd never forgive him for what he'd done. So, quietly, he went to our bedroom and started packing. Emily, on the other hand, dropped to her knees, begging for forgiveness. She said she'd do anything to fix things, but she needed a place to stay, especially since she was pregnant with my nephew. Hearing her mention family sent me into a rage. I grabbed her arm, yanked her to her feet, and shoved her out the door. I didn't care if I was being rough. I was furious. How dare she call us family after betraying me like this? She kept crying and begging on the porch, but I slammed the door in her face. I went to the guest room, tossed her things into her suitcase haphazardly, and threw them out into the yard. I told her to leave, or I'd call the police. She kept crying, but I didn't care. I just shut the door and went back inside. A few minutes later, my husband came out with his bags, apologizing profusely. I pretended not to hear him. Emily continued crying and begging on the porch for nearly an hour, but I put on my headphones and ignored her. Eventually, the silence told me she'd finally left. That night, I called my lawyer, told them everything, and said I wanted a divorce. I wasn't ready to tell my family and friends just yet, but the next day, my parents called. They said what I had done was horrible. According to them, I was cruel and insensitive to Emily. especially considering all she had been through. I found it odd because my parents had always treated us equally. Emily wasn't their favorite, but when they started defending her, it didn't sit right with me. They told me they knew she was pregnant and that I couldn't just kick her out, especially in her condition recovering from a serious illness and between jobs. They said she had no one else to help her, as her friends were dealing with their own financial struggles. My parents argued that as her sister, I should have been more supportive. I could only forgive her foolishness and be there for her. On top of that, my parents reminded me that it was my husband who seduced her, not the other way around. They said he had told her that he was managing our finances and was a successful writer of novels and screenplays, supposedly keeping his success anonymous because he didn't want the fame. My sister, being naive, believed him and thought he was someone important. That's why she fell for his lies. But then it got worse. She admitted to having an affair with him and thought they could force me out of the house to live together. Unfortunately for them, their plan backfired, especially since they hadn't coordinated their stories. When she confessed everything, she ruined it for both of them. I stood my ground. I asked, "What sister? I don't have a sister." Then, I argued that I had every right to kick her out because she chose to betray me with my husband. It didn't matter that he played a part too. They both equally stabbed me in the back. There was no reason to kick him out and let her stay as if nothing had happened. I didn't care that she was pregnant or unemployed. I had already considered those things before letting her stay with me for months. And how did she repay me? By having an affair with my husband under my roof. Besides, it wasn't like she was heavily pregnant and unable to manage. On her own, she was only a few weeks along. Even if she were 9 months pregnant, I still would have kicked her out because what she did was disgusting. She was ready to throw me out when she thought the house belonged to my husband, so I saw it as poetic justice. But my parents kept insisting I was too harsh. They focused on how I handled the situation rather than what she had done. I got tired of hearing the same arguments, so I hung up on them. Since then, we haven't spoken. Do you think I was wrong to kick my pregnant sister out of my house? Update 1. I understand some people think kicking a pregnant woman out of my house is horrible, but keeping her here after what she did would have been insane. Luckily, most people agree I was justified and believe she should find somewhere else to stay. Yesterday, I blocked my parents. This situation has taken a huge emotional toll on me, but I can't stop working. I'm the boss, so I have to put on a strong face and handle everything at work. It's business as usual. But when I get home, I completely break down. The emotional pain is unbearable. A few days ago, my lawyer and I filed for divorce. My husband will be served soon, and I don't think he'll contest it. He knows me well enough to realize I won't let him off the hook if he tries. Even though I'm confident in my decision, it still hurts. Winning the divorce won't magically make everything better. I can't believe that after 8 years together, he would betray me with my sister. I genuinely thought we were in love and would grow old together. Now, I'm questioning everything we've ever had. Maybe this wasn't his first affair. Maybe it's just the first time he got caught. The thought of that breaks my heart. But there's nothing I can do now except accept it and try to move on. He's the only one who hasn't tried to contact me since I kicked him out. My parents and Emily have, but only to convince me to let her stay again for free. It's insane that my parents are taking her side. In my original post, I mentioned how my parents always treated Emily and me equally. Now I'm not so sure. I never had high expectations of Emily. We weren't best friends, but we didn't have a bad relationship either. That's why I agreed to help her and let her stay. We had a spare room, and I thought, why not? My parents encouraged it too, and I believe that's what families do. But I never expected her to betray me like this. It hurts when someone you've been helping for months stabs you in the back. With my parents, it's even harder to accept. They've always been reasonable and fair, so I expected them to be upset with Emily. To be fair, they were, but in our conversations, it was clear they didn't approve of her actions. However, they kept insisting that the damage was done and now we needed to move on. I don't know what's gotten into them, but I'm deeply disappointed. I feel like I've lost all the respect I once had for them, and I'm not sure it can ever be restored. Emotionally, I'm drained. Mentally, I'm focused on work because my personal life has completely fallen apart. I haven't even told my friends about what's happening, though I know I'll have to eventually. My husband and I share many mutual friends, and I'd rather they hear the truth from me than whatever he might say. At this point, I don't know what to expect from anyone anymore. Right now, I'm prioritizing two things: ensuring my work doesn't suffer and handling the divorce. I'm fairly confident my husband won't contest it. I've been fair with the terms, but there's always a chance of the unexpected. So I'm preparing all the necessary documentation just in case. Beyond that, I'm trying to keep my mind as clear as possible. The last thing I need is to spiral out of control. Sharing my feelings here has been incredibly helpful. I truly appreciate everyone who's reached out, commented, and offered support. It means more to me than you can imagine. Update 2. As I expected, my husband didn't contest the divorce. He texted me to say the terms were fair. In another message, he admitted he had been thinking of ways to apologize, but couldn't come up with anything that didn't sound weak or insincere. So he decided to just say it. He's sorry. He explained that he lied to Emily to impress her because he had been feeling inadequate. He didn't own anything, relied on me financially, and didn't even have children, which left him feeling like he lacked purpose. His novel wasn't progressing, and he felt like he'd wasted 4 years on something going nowhere. That frustration turned into depression, but he couldn't admit it to himself, let alone talk to me about it. Then Emily came along, and without thinking about how depraved it was, he started lying to her to boost his ego. He claimed to be in control of our finances and successful in his career. Eventually, it led to them sleeping together. He thought it would be a one-time mistake, but it spiraled out of control. Even though he felt guilty, he couldn't stop. It became his way of escaping everything that was wrong in his life. When Emily got pregnant and everything came to light, he told me he deeply regretted everything. He admitted he ruined what we had, but swore this was the first and only time he cheated. He begged me to believe him and hoped that someday I might forgive him. After reading that message, I cried. It was yet another reminder of everything. I had lost everything I thought I knew about him. I thought we had a solid relationship built on love, but in a single day, it all came crashing down. Losing that trust is devastating, and anyone who's been through a divorce or betrayal understands exactly how I feel. Part of me wanted to hate him, to focus on all the terrible things he'd done, but in the end, it still hurts. I hated myself for crying over his message, but after I finished, I gathered the strength to block him. I didn't reply. He didn't deserve a response. Not now, when everything was so raw. After a while, I started feeling even angrier about what he had said. All he had to do was talk to me. I never, not once, made him feel bad for choosing to stay home and work on his novel. I'm not a particularly creative person, and I've never been into writing or anything like that except now, I guess, since I need to get all of this off my chest. But I respected his creative side. I didn't see anything wrong with him staying home. Maybe his fragile ego couldn't handle it. Maybe other people made comments and he just got bitter. But after 8 years together, the least he could have done was tell me what was going on. We got married to support each other, and I would have been there for him. Maybe we could have worked it out together, but he chose not to. Instead, he leaned on Emily, and that's how we ended up in this mess. The more I think about it, the more disgusting and pathetic it seems. He lied about so many things just to make himself seem bigger and better. It's pathetic. I loved him as he was, but that wasn't enough for him. This will never make sense to me. At least with Emily, I understand her motive. She wanted my life without putting in any effort. She thought she could do that by getting pregnant and moving in with my so-called rich husband. But now, I can just choose to ignore her existence. In a few months, I'll be done with the divorce, and I'll never have to see or think about him again. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since my last update, and I had a few peaceful days. But this morning, my parents showed up at my house. It was odd because, ever since they moved to my dad's hometown to manage the family business with my uncle, they rarely visit. Usually, it was Emily and me who had to go see them. The fact that they took a flight to see me meant something big. I knew they were only here to talk about Emily, so when I opened the door, I told them outright, if they were here to talk about her, I didn't want to hear it. There's only one Sunday a week, and I wasn't about to waste mine rehashing the same topic. I'd already said everything I needed to say. There was nothing left to discuss. I made it clear they could only come in if they apologized to me first. They had two choices: apologize or leave. I set my boundaries very clearly. But my parents insisted they came specifically to talk about Emily. They said we needed to address this because the way I was treating her and them wasn't right. To them, we were family, and families handle things differently. Once again, they started with the family angle, and just like with Emily, I lost my patience. This is not how families treat each other, not in the kind of family I want to have. I'll give them this. In this family, we do handle things differently. My sister sleeps with my husband, and I kick her out of my house. That's certainly different from most families. I laid it all out for them. They tried to stammer and come up with arguments, but I didn't let them. I steamrolled through everything they could have said. By the time I was done, my mom was in tears, but they were on my turf, and I could talk to them however I wanted, especially since they decided to bother me this morning. This whole conversation should have been directed at Emily, the one who actually did something wrong, not me. After I finished yelling, my mom was crying so hard that my dad told me he never wanted to speak to me again. He said I was a horrible daughter for making my own mother cry, the woman who gave me life. But I don't care. They can think I'm crazy if they want. I know I'm not. And that's enough for me. If anyone's crazy, it's them or my sister. And honestly, maybe all three of them. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update. I haven't been in contact with anyone in my family, Emily included, and definitely not my parents. All I know is that they've been sending her money. As for my soon-to-be ex-husband, I've heard from a few people that he's now living with his parents. Once the divorce is finalized, he plans to move to another state. Before you ask, I have no idea what he plans to do about his child. At this point, most of our friends know exactly what happened, and the majority have started cutting him out of their lives. A few are trying to stay neutral, avoiding getting involved. As for me, my life is slowly but surely getting back on track. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my peace now. I'm not exactly happy yet, but at least I'm calm, which is a huge improvement from last month. Little by little, I know I'll be happy again. After all, bad things always come to an end eventually. Update 5. This update is pretty recent because some new developments have come up that you might want to know about. My sister lost a baby and has been blaming me for it. According to her, the stress I caused made her miscarry. My parents are also on this crusade with her. The silver lining is that they're not bothering me directly. This is all coming from neutral people who claim they're not taking sides. But somehow, they managed to accuse me of killing a baby out of pride. It's funny, though none of these people have taken my sister into their homes, so by their logic, they're just as guilty as I am. If my sister cared about her pregnancy, she shouldn't have slept with someone else's husband, especially her sisters, or at least use protection. Nothing about this situation is normal. But when the accusations come from people this irrational, it's not worth my time or energy. Update 6. My ex-husband contacted me a few hours ago, and you won't believe what he had to say. No, he didn't ask me to come back. We haven't ended on horrible terms, relatively speaking, which is why I even responded. He admitted he was wrong, and to his credit, he's made the divorce process easy. I don't hold grudges against him, not because he deserves it, but because I don't want to waste my time on anger or thoughts about him. No cheater is worth that. What he told me, however, was very interesting. He confirmed that my sister was never pregnant. He called to let me know because he'd heard about all the things being said about me and wanted me to know the truth. He also told those people the same thing. Apparently, he'd been asking her for proof of the pregnancy and even offered to go with her to a doctor's appointment several times. She always avoided it. Eventually, she announced she'd lost the baby. When he asked for evidence, she had none. He talked to my parents, and they didn't have any proof either. There's no record of her being pregnant or losing the baby. One day, she simply decided to tell everyone she'd had a miscarriage, and that was it. So now, all the accusations against me for making her lose the baby mean absolutely nothing. My parents have tried to contact me to reconcile, and they've even stopped supporting her financially now that they know they won't be grandparents. But honestly, it's too little too late. I don't care what they do with my sister now. What I needed was their support when I was betrayed. Support that any decent parent would give a child in my position. So, no, it's a no for them too. In the end, my sister lost a sibling, a home, and my help because she chose to sleep with my husband and fake a pregnancy. My parents lost a daughter because they prioritized a lie over the truth. I think the three of them should head to Vegas and try their luck there. Maybe gambling will work out better for them than family.